Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Davian Bryan, who is charged with the rape of a student, to stand trial next year. Several injured in bus collision along Bogwalk Gorge. And later in sports, Jamaica triple jumper nominated for Athletic Rising Star Award. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shane Masters and here are the details. 10 people were killed in various communities in Clarendon over the last 12 hours. The shootings occurred in Tollgate, Chapperton and Buckner. Among the deceased are 61-year-old Evan Francis and 46-year-old Alicia Francis, who were shot at their gate on Duke Street in Tollgate. Head of the Clarendon Police Superintendent Carlos Russell says those deaths are linked to a domestic dispute.
This incident would have happened several hours after Mr. Francis' son was also shot and killed in the Milk River area sometime last night. From what we are picking up on the ground, these murders would have occurred because of some domestic disputes.
And over in Yorktown, 3 men were shot at a shop. 2 died. One of the men has been identified as 54-year-old Sylvester Richardson. The other man is unidentified. And in Buckner, 23-year-old O'Shane Salmon, OC Alkaline or Tallman, was killed by gunmen. Davian Bryan, who is charged with the rape of a student, is to stand trial on June 6 next year in the Portland Home Circuit Court. The trial date was set during a plea and case management hearing this morning. Mr. Bryan is also charged with grievous sexual assault, forcible abduction, and wounding with intent in relation to the incident in March during which he allegedly abducted the student, dragged her into bushes, and raped her. Mr. Bryan is represented by attorney John Jacobs in this matter. Meanwhile, a February 21 trial date has been set for Mr. Bryan in relation to the abduction of 2 girls in Bath, St. Thomas in October last year. Mr. Bryan was nabbed in Durham, Portland in March in connection with the abduction of the 2 girls. In other stories, the Ministry of Education is reporting that normality is being restored at the Oberlin High School in St. Andrew. This follows a bizarre religious episode at the institution last Wednesday, which saw some students fainting and acting strangely. There was a significant drop in student attendance since then. However, after a meeting involving Education Ministry representatives and parents on the weekend, students have been returning to school.
Parents, and even on Monday morning, there were parents at school. I was able to have a meeting with them to let them know the ministry is here to provide the support. Teachers are here, guidance counselors are there, and so on. So we will remain with Oberlin High School to ensure that normalcy returns entirely, completely to the school.
The Education Minister says the United Church of Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, UCJCI, which operates the school, is also providing support to the students.
Chairwoman, announced that while I was there on Monday that they would be providing trained counselors as well to help the children to understand the event of Wednesday and to ensure that if they have any questions, any concerns, that those are answered.
The National Parenting Support Commission, NPSC, held a media launch on Tuesday to mark National Parent Month. The aim is to remind parents that a relationship must exist between schools and homes. Codian Barrett tells us more.
Parenting is the single most important role that any human being will undertake. In an effort to ensure it is being taken seriously, the National Parenting Support Commission is creating a new way forward by encouraging a partnership between parents and schools. The theme, Reignite the Village, is pulling on the traditional belief that it takes a village to raise a child.
In previous years, we talked about planning for parenthood, the way we plan for everything else in our lives, that it shouldn't just happen to you. But let's say it did. The village has to come together to support. So where those capacities are missing, persons who would have information based on the fact that they read a couple books, based on the fact that they have accessed formal training, they will help to guide the process.
But a survey conducted by the National Parenting Support Commission revealed that 439 parents were actually shifting their parenting duties onto teachers.
So where they can't bother, the teachers were now to take on those responsibilities, which tells me that the model for education has certainly changed. It's not just about teaching and learning in its original context and original sense, is it? Teachers have to take on so much. Is that the ideal education system that we want, though?
She says the launch is to encourage parents to take responsibility as a partner. In the meantime, Education Minister Favour Williams provided an update on the Oberlin High School.
There was a PTA meeting that happened on Saturday afternoon in the virtual space, and we also put out a press release encouraging parents to send their students back at school. And in fact, on Monday morning, as I said, over 1,200 students were back in the face-to-face environment at school. So things are returning to normal.
Cody Barrett, TVJ News.
And it's time for a break here on the Midday News. Stay with us. Much more stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. With the new Firearms Act now in effect, National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang has also announced a gun amnesty to begin this weekend. However, there are some who believe the minister should think carefully about how the initiative will work.
In Parliament on Tuesday, Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang announced to the House that the legislative procedure for the new Firearms Act has been completed.
As of today, anyone apprehended and charged by any of the identified criminal breaches under this Act will now be subject to a new range of penalties dealing with prohibited weapons, that is, ranging from 15 years to life imprisonment.
He says with the implementation of the new Act, the promised gun amnesty will come into effect on November 5 and will run for 15 days. He explained that the amnesty is not only for criminals.
Essentially, in summary, Madam Speaker, this is someone who may have a firearm, an illegal firearm, with no criminal intent, that is, may surrender it during the specified time. It's not just a criminal changing of the mind. There are individuals who may have inherited a firearm, from grandfather, uncle, or otherwise. They have had it locked in a safe and just not paying the attention to it. There might also be young men living in a tough community who are honest, hard-working individuals. They might have applied for a firearm license, they didn't get it. They acquire a firearm with no intention of committing a criminal act and therefore find themselves exposed, and we are providing an opportunity for them to surrender the firearm because we do not want to criminalize the individuals.
However, with the Act now in effect, Councillor for the Yorktown Division in Clarendon, Ufel Purcell, says there needs to be some rethinking of how the amnesty will work.
You can't come on public radio by saying that you are going to ask persons who have firearm to bring it in 2 weeks' time. But also, there's going to be an investigation. If you want the guns, you have to have an amnesty that will ask every individual to bring in the illegal guns so that those guns can be taken off the street. I don't know what can happen after, but if persons recognize that those guns are going to be a problem to them, then they're not going to bring it in. So we're going to have the same problem coming over and over.
The amnesty will end at midnight on November 19, 2022. Herman Green, TVJ News.
2 coaster bus drivers are now in hospital after a motor vehicle collision in the Bogwa Gorge in St. Catherine Tuesday night. The incident occurred shortly after 10 p.m. when one coaster bus slammed into another that was transporting vendors and goods from Kingston to Falmouth.
When we look, I see the coaster come from Flatbridge Way, and the way the coaster come from Flatbridge Way, the coaster that drive fast. So my bus now when me in I drive out of the coaster. I'm say coaster come fast. So I drive out of the coaster. And by the time if you come out of the coaster running on him.
I was just here when the bus go up, boom, boom. And when by the time to reach out of the bus, I see one of the driver and chop off clean and my driver couldn't even move.
The coaster running a ferry bus. Me see it. I don't know about the time, I never did that sleep. They sued me too high.
A man get to fly the door. And flying the door while I will jump out. You understand? Out of the bus.
Nearly 15 people were on the bus along with goods. It is not yet known whether the other coaster had passengers on board. The passengers are being treated for minor injuries. And for a look into the economy, here's Davian Bryan with the Business Minute.
In business news, attraction owner Dolphin Cove Jamaica appears to be in line to possibly buy its rival Mystic Mountain Rainforest Adventures. The Supreme Court will, however, be overseeing any possible deal. Up to Tuesday, the court was still adjudicating on litigation involving Mystic Mountain. In the most recent development, representatives from Rainforest Adventures made an application as Karibukai asking the court to stop the sale of Mystic Mountain to an unnamed purchaser. In the global economy, the U.S. Federal Reserve is expected to raise interest rates yet again on Wednesday by another 0.75 of a percentage point. This would be the fourth straight rate hike of that amount. The decision comes as inflation continues to plague the U.S. economy, pushing the cost to borrow money up even further. Federal Reserve's Chair Jerome Powell acknowledged concerns that the inflation is triggering a possible recession, but he said persistent inflation would bring greater economic suffering than a recession would. It's likely that the Fed will enact another 0.5 percentage hike in December. That's it for the Business Minute. I'm Davian Bryan.
And here's a preview of what's coming up in this evening's Health Report.
In this evening's Health Report, we look at type 1 diabetes.
And there are those who may just not be doing well and not growing, not learning, and a detailed check when the teacher and the parent decides that they need to get a check. You'll find that quite often. And also, it's not only those children of persons with diabetes who have to be aware and alert and to get checked regularly, because diabetes can strike out of the blue. So any child who is not doing well in class, who is not paying attention, as you'd say, who is not growing like his other peers and so on, who can't participate in the games and so on. Those are some of the early indications.
That's the Health Report in Primetime News at 7. And now for today's Healthy Living tip. Lose extra weight, be more physically active, eat healthy plant foods, and eat healthy fats.
And it's now time for the latest news overseas. Here's Sandy Williams.
In the region, police are investigating the murder of a patient at the Dominica China Friendship Hospital Monday evening. Lawmen said 2 masked men went to a man's bedside at the Alford ward and shot him several times. Police Chief Daniel Carbon has vowed to find the perpetrators and bring them to justice. The patient was being treated for gunshot injuries to his thigh, which he sustained over the weekend when 2 people in a vehicle opened fire on him while he was driving a vehicle. On the international scene, there has been an uptick in violence in Ecuador. 5 police officers lost their lives and 4 others were injured in attacks on Tuesday. Investigators are now working to find the attackers. According to authorities, Tuesday's events are linked to the penitentiary crisis that's affecting the country. In response to the upsurge, the president has declared a state of exception in different regions of Ecuador. And those were the top regional stories. I'm Sandy Williams.
And we head to a quick break. When we come back, Renata Brown will have your midday sports report.